They're all just from the voice. So I've got some little bug that's going around. I won't get too close. So I'm just going to be talking for a brief amount of time. Welcome everybody here tonight. First of all, we have a great crowd, which is awesome. I think this is going to be a very successful and has all the makings of a successful meeting tonight. We have a lot of people in the audience that are looking for answers to questions, basically to how to save money. The good news is we have some very smart people here tonight that are going to be able to provide you with information so that you'll be able to do that. But what I think would be the definition of a very successful meeting tonight is really twofold. First of all of you that are here, and just out of curiosity, how many people are here tonight in the audience that are not from Bel Air Beach? My name is Larry Roberts, and as of Monday, a couple of days ago, I'm the vice mayor of Bel Air Beach. So the successful meeting would be for all of you people that are here tonight, when you leave and somebody asks you, how was that meeting? How valuable was it to you? Hopefully your answer is going to be, it was very valuable. We got information that we now can proceed with in order to come up with some mitigation to help us save money for our homes. So that would be one way that this is a successful meeting. The other way this is a successful meeting is if the people that are here providing us all this information, they get asked, how was the meeting? And their answer is, wow, the people in the audience were so courteous and so professional how they handled themselves at the meeting. We were blown away because a lot of times that it gets out of control. So my hope is, I'm asking all of you guys to please let them do their job. I'm confident that they will give you time to ask questions as the meeting goes on. So at the end of the meeting, you have hopefully all the answers you are looking for. I know we're going to be taping this and it'll be on our website. So afterwards, if you want to review the information again, it will be available. So thank you again for being here tonight. I hope you enjoy it. I'm now going to turn over the microphone to Carl, our city manager, and who has some other things to say. Thank you.
So yes, okay. I'm gonna stand back here so that you can see me at home. But I'm I'm city manager of Bel Air Beach, and I'm also the floodplain administrator for Bel Air Beach. So when you hear all this 50% rule and substantial damage determinations, that is my responsibility as the floodplain manager. So if there's any questions specifically related to City of Bel Air Beach floodplain administration code permitting process, I'd be happy to answer that. Just want to run through some introductions. We're going to have two main speakers tonight, and leading us off first is going to be Julie Garrett, and she is Disaster Recovery Public Affairs Specialist. And that is with the Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience, U.S. Small Business Administration. And following up will be a representative from Florida Department of Emergency Management. And that we have Angie O'Donnell, who's the Mitigation Planning Manager. And we also have Evan Jenkins. And that they are running a little bit late, but that they'll be following up. And Angie O'Donnell is the Mitigation Planning Manager. And then after those two speakers, we're going to do some Q&A. And we'll just walk around and take questions from the audience as well as from the webcast. And then we also have some other staff here that is just assisting and offering support. We have DSA staff, which is Disaster Survival Assistance, and that's long-term recovery questions. They're broken out in the lobby, and there's going to be a table in the kitchen. And they can answer questions on individual assistance applications that you may have. And they have computers that they can look up each person's file. With that said, I just want to say a word of caution. When we're doing Q&A or we were asking questions to a speaker, just make sure that you don't bring up anything personal, addresses, phone numbers, specific dollar amounts related to your home, your case, whatever you're dealing with, because we've been warned that people will use that information back against you when it's presented in public. So we want to make sure that if you ask any questions, you want to kind of keep them general about the process, or just general questions for each scenario that each of you may be going through. And then if you have any personal questions related to your home, then ask them in private. And that is all. So now I will introduce Julie Garrett. And again, she's the disaster recovery public affairs specialist. Whoever raised.
Do I have to stand up here? Stand next to her. Hey, everybody. My name is Julie Garrett, and I work for the SBA. You're probably thinking, well, you're here because I don't have a damaged business. So what's up? When there's a disaster, the SBA administers the country's disaster loan program, and that assists homeowners, renters, businesses of all sizes, not just small businesses, and to nonprofit organizations like churches or arts organizations or food banks or a nonprofit school. So we offer a range of loans. Nobody wants loans, they would rather get grants, but I'm going to tell you about the loan program because that is one of your options. SBA's disaster loans are for uncompensated losses. This is to fill the gap between insurance or money you get from other sources and what you need to fully recover. So let's say that your home is severely damaged, as many of you have severely damaged homes from talking with folks at the beginning back there. And let's say your insurance gives you enough to fix the damage on the house the way it used to be, but you have to rebuild it because of the 50% rule to those code required upgrades, which are really expensive. Like maybe you have to elevate and do other things. An SBA disaster loan could help you with that. The loans are for up to $500,000, and that is for repairs. And required by code, you can use a disaster loan for them. You can also add on 20% of your verified loss to your loan for mitigation measures. So if you have to elevate or one of the other things to make your home safer, a mitigation loan can also go towards what you need in that case. So the interest rate is as low as 2.813%. And that's for homeowners and renters. The terms are up to 30 years. And that's to keep the payments very reasonable. There is no payment required for the first 12 months after your funding is dispersed. So it gives you a little window to get things going without having to worry about that. Interest rate. So it's basically a 0% loan for the first year. A lot of people don't like that. They don't put it in early. If you're like that and you put it in early, there's no penalty. Depending on the size of your loan, if you buy $50,000 or less, there's no collateral required. State, do put a loan state, and you accept position of that. It's going to a bank or a credit union to get a loan. There are options available with this program. Severe damage to your home, there's the option to possibly refinance, relocate, and a lot of mitigation. So I will encourage you to apply. It's free. There's no obligation to accept the loan. You have 3 weeks to withdraw the paperwork and decide if you want to accept it. And even if you turn it down, you have 6 months to change your mind. So if you think about it, it's just kind of a tool as you're deciding all this, trying to figure out what to do, piecing everything together. It's just one option that you have. And you want to apply it before the deadline, January 7th. That is an option. We really want to talk to them and find out everything that's possible for you to do with that loan program. But what could you do? Because I know you're trying to figure out what you can do. So I really encourage you to do that. So with 500,000 for real estate, if we're home, it's 100,000 for personal property for homeowners. So everything about damage inside your house, your appliances, your computer, your clothing, moving furniture, that kind of thing, and your vehicle. If you get that flooded, interest rate, you can use a disaster loan to pay that off. If you've already started making repairs and put those costs onto a higher interest credit card or took out a higher interest loan, you can use a disaster loan to pay that down. So that's how it is for homeowners and renters. And then if anybody who has a business is doing just up to $2 million, including if you don't own the property, improvements. If you apply for a disaster loan, closed and some of the budget and help with your building expenses. Considered for them. Separate application, we'll just look at that too. Thinking about disaster loans is there things outside that insurance and don't. So if you have rockers, damaged fences, patio, all kind of thing, if you have a shed, a garage, a garden shed, that is also eligible under the disaster loan program. And you don't have to wait for your insurance to apply. You can apply now and just promise to use your insurance settlement to pay down the loan as well. So you can apply online at sba.gov/disaster, sba.gov/disaster. Otherwise, it's either back there with flyers with this information on it, so just come back and see me. You can call 800-659-2955, 800-659-2955, and look over the phone. Since we have 3 centers open in Phoenix County, we can help you input your application, walk you through the whole thing, answer your questions. After a disaster like this, you're going to spend for a while, you call a disaster room, you're just so stressed and everything's hitting you at once. It's really hard to make decisions and think things through. So if you need help with that disaster room, come and get it from us. We're here now. We'll staff at disaster recovery center. That is closest to your work, and when you go visit your mom, whatever, it doesn't matter which one you go in. And we have I just tell you real quick that there's one of the botanical gardens in Magnolia Room. That's at the DRC, and it's open Monday through Saturday, 7 to 7, and that's at 12520 Emmington Road in Mexico. We have another sign open at the DRC at Davison, South St. Pete. Okay. Is that Epperson at St. Pete College, 13805 58th Street North in Clearwater. So come back there, I've got all the information. I'd like to give you more and answer your questions. And I just encourage you to please apply and see what your options are with our program and your obligation to take it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Drew. Okay, I believe I've done this here. So you are up next, and is this Evan Jenkins? Great. So Evan Jenkins is an ops grant specialist, is that correct?
Mitigation planner.
Okay. And then you're going to cover the long-term residential mitigation grants for Upton, okay? And then you want to stay.
Oh. You see me, guys? Thank you for having me. Like I said, my name is Evan Jenkins. I'm a mitigation planner on the mitigation team at the Florida Division of Emergency Management. So what is mitigation? It is a reduction or elimination of the risk of future damage to property or life from disasters like flooding or strong winds. Some examples of mitigation efforts could include elevating homes, retrofitting buildings, acquisitions of floodplain properties, and window retrofits. The two key FEMA programs that provide grant funding for residents are the Hazard Mitigation, the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, or HMGP, and the other one is the Flood Mitigation Assistance Swift Current Program. Both of these programs have typical residential projects include structural elevations of homes, which will raise your home at the base flood elevation, that way it's out of the flood areas. Structural property acquisitions or demolitions, that means you will acquire that property and demo it and turn that area to green space. That way other people won't be risk in that area anymore for flooding. And then structural mitigation reconstruction is they'll build and rebuild in that same area with building codes and stuff like that. For the HMGP cost share, the federal government pays us approximately 75%, and the homeowners are responsible for 25%. And for the flood mitigation assistance SWIFT grant program, this one is for the national, it is designed to reduce flood risk to buildings insured under the National Flood Insurance Program, or NFIP. So based on if you have that insurance program, if you have severe repairable loss, which is approximately 4 to claims, you can get 100% federal cost and 0% for homeowners. The loss properties would be 90% federal cost and 10%. And then if you don't have any claims, but you still have insurance or NFIP, then it's be the 75.5. These grants are typically for state, local governments, or tribal governments. Certain nonprofit residents and businesses can apply for the eligible self-applicants like their local government. However, the state is doing a new state loan program. That way, homeowners can apply directly to the state. That way, you don't have to go to your local communities or your resident properties. If you would like to apply under your local government, each government has a local mitigation strategy working group. And you can go to the residential mitigation at em.highflorida.com. You can ask for that information. And if you want more information on the state-run residential mitigation program, we have flyers in the back. And also, you can ask that same email if you have any questions for that. Let me know if you have any questions. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The web address is residential mitigation at em.minnesota.com. Is that everything you have to start? Yes, sir. Okay, so we're opening up to questions and answers. Just raise your hand and open that down and put the microphone so we can really hear it. Start here. Most of the residents here haven't ever been flooded until Helene. So most of them would only have one occurrence, some two, from a medallion, right? The Great Storm of '93. So
a lot of us fall into with the one occurrence or two occurrence.
So if you have, um, so if it says that two or more MFI claims over $1,000, it would be at 90% title and 10%. If you don't have any before that, it would be just 75.25. Just one, yeah, just if it's just one, then it'd probably just 75.25. Next question.
I've got someone online.
Okay, we'll do that next.
What is the process to actually apply directly to get the grant? Because the house that I'm looking at is in Largo, and Largo doesn't seem to know anything at all about this program. And I've heard the same thing. A lot of times local governments don't really know anything about it, and they don't push your project forward. So so what would I have to do to get them to actually consider the grant directly?
So I'm Angie Odell. I'm the state mitigation planning manager. I have a little bit more knowledge than him since I'm involved in the statewide residential mitigation program. If your local government does not want to take you, you can apply. We will be releasing details within the next couple of weeks as to what you should start doing in order to be able to apply. We are currently in a kind of silence for our vendor procurement for this, so I can't speak a whole lot on it. However, for everybody who is in the room tonight, do have flyers in the back that break it down the next steps for information that you guys should be collecting if you are interested in it. This includes photos of high water marks, any damages to your homes, whether it's wind damage or flood damage. But we will be releasing details on how you can apply to the state within the next couple of weeks. On those flyers, one of them has QR codes on it. You can scan those QR codes. One of them takes you to that email address, and then the other one also takes you as to where you can get onto our interest list through our gov delivery notification system.
One online. Go ahead, Kathy.
Hi, this is Kathy Walsh. I had one comment and a question. My first comment is the audio is very hard to hear. I don't know if you can help us with that, but it's breaking up pretty significantly. But my question is, are there any short-term deadlines that we need to know about for any of these programs? Like what is our runway in terms of completing or starting any of this? Do we have a timeline of, when we have to have things started?
As far as mitigation time, is it a little bit better for you? So as far as the timeline comes, when it comes to the mitigation, we don't have any deadlines. As far as the other programs that were spoken upon, I can have them come up here and give you those deadlines. But when it comes to the mitigation and the statewide residential mitigation program, we currently don't have any. It's muted over here. Gotta love
Through the main.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
you're fine.
All right, and just wanted to make sure. As far as the mitigation goes, we don't have any hard deadlines just because we're trying to get the program up and running. I do want to emphasize they're not recovery efforts. It's long-term. It does take some process. We are looking at between 1 to 2 years in order to get underneath application as far as contract goes and close out of construction. That is our main goal. However, every home is individually different, so there may be problems that run along with it. But there are no deadlines as far as mitigation goes.
The disaster loan application deadline is January 7th. That's for Hurricane Helene and Milton. Since we don't have business owners here, I won't go into the economic injury deadline, but that's next summer.
Thanks very much. Several questions, please. One is that rumor is that these programs haven't been funded by Congress, particularly for the FEMA program and from the state level, have the programs been funded so that there actually will be money available? Secondly, I believe I recall reading in the flood mitigation program that the application had to be approved in full before any improvements or construction began. And if it's going to take 2 years to get an approval, obviously people won't want to be just sitting and not working on their homes during that time. So is there any flexibility there? And lastly, many of these programs are based on a finding of substantial damage. And if you could explain to us the significance of that, must there be a finding of substantial damage? And how is that done? Or if not, what are the criteria for the level of damage and repair that's required? Thank you.
So to address your first question, when it comes to the funding for this, we have HMGP funds as well as the Flood Mitigation Assistance SWIFT Current program. We will have funding for both of those, so there is not a lack of funding on our part when it comes to the statewide residential mitigation program. For your, I don't remember your second question, but for your third question as to whether you are substantially damaged or not, that has no, it's not going to affect your eligibility in any manner as to whether you're substantially damaged or not. Your second question was the timeline, right? For the applications to be able to go under contract. Okay. Yeah, so back to your second question. It's 1 to 2 years when it comes to the time of being able to go from application development is going to take between 4 to 11 months, depending on as to how quickly you can get all of your documents together. The 1 to 2 years is going to be the entire construction process. And what that means is you will have to vacate your home in order for your house to be either elevated or underneath the mitigation reconstruction. And if you go underneath the acquisition, as soon as the contract is signed, you will need to be out of your home at that point. And during that time, through the construction aspect, you would be out of your home. Don't be discouraged by it because there are temporary housing options that we can do for those options, but it's going to be 1 to 2 years by the time that the construction is all the way completed from the time the application is submitted.
One more question. It's all three.
I just wanted to address the funding thing that I'm sure you've heard about on the news. SBA currently doesn't have funding right now. We're waiting for Congress to approve it. Even though that is true, all the people who work at SBA, who process the loans, etc., are working. We want you to apply now so that when the funding comes in, we can quickly disperse the loans. So I encourage you to apply and not to wait until you hear that we have funding. And then the other thing is that substantial damage question. Although it was probably mitigation, I just want to say that you don't have to have substantial damage to apply for an SBA disaster loan. You can have any level of damage. There is no minimum on those loans. There's no income limits on those loans. Sometimes people ask me if they make too much money to apply for the loan. You don't have to think about that. That's not an issue with these.
Is unfortunately, I've reached a category of the repetitive damage with this recent storm. What did you say the amount was for a claim? Is it 1,000 in history, or is it 5,000? That counts as a claim.
So for repetitive loss, if it's 2 or more of,
Right.
$1,000 or more for your claim. So,
Okay.
and for that one, it'd be repetitive loss, and it'd be a 90-10 split. If it's 4 or more, it'd be 100%.
All right. Well, unfortunately, with the recent one, it makes 4 for us that are over that limit that we have. This will be our 4th claim. I talked to Lynn Reed, the previous city manager here 6 years ago, about trying to get a grant to elevate our home. And at the time, we weren't repetitive loss. There was a lot of work that the city needed to do to be partners with me to do the grant. So we kind of like died in the water.
Right.
And now that we're now repetitive loss for homes, if we tear our home down and build new, instead of raising the home, do we get the grant money towards the cost of the new home? Other than raising the home, existing home,
Right.
we're accomplishing the same thing by tearing it down and building new.
So mitigation reconstruction would be very similar to that. You go demo and then rebuild like that.
Correct.
So you could do it in that program. It would just, when they rebuild it, has to go to the same standards as it was originally of your stamp of your square footage of the original house when they get rebuild it, and they'll elevate it to this right standard when they do that as well.
So if you have a 2,000 square foot home, you build, let's say it's 2,500 square feet, you get credit for up to 2,000, and you pay for more than.
I also wouldn't start any construction until you have a project. Any of those, right? So
To answer your question, for mitigation reconstruction, some of the eligibility requirements that come with it, say you do have a 2,000 square foot home now and you choose to do the mitigation reconstruction, the eligibility is you can only build up to 10% more than what you have. Quick math, it would be 2,200 square feet that you would be able to build up. Now, if you've started the construction aspects of any of these, you would not be eligible because FEMA will not sign an application and a contract because construction has already started before they signed off on it. And that comes from the environmental and historical preservation reviews that we have to do at the state in order to verify that it is eligible and there's not a large amount of ground disturbance.
Okay, so if you take a 2,000 square foot home, you build it back to with 10%, 2,200. You saying you can possibly get 100% of that cost?
If you're severe repetitive loss, you would get the 100%. If you are just a regular repetitive loss, it would be the 90-10%. So you'd be eligible, like you'd be responsible for the 10%. And then if you're not repetitively lost, you would go back to the 75-25.
In our situation, I mean, those guidelines were repetitive loss. So you're saying 100% severe, put the money out.
Yes, they're all cost-based, cost reimbursement-based grants.
Okay.
So you would have to front the money in order for the construction cost aspects and then be able to come back in.
I'll keep asking questions, but the last question. So if you make the home 2,500 instead of 2,000 or 2,200 with the 10%, is that a from receiving?
Yes. Yeah, because it's a FEMA guideline for eligibility for mitigation reconstruction. You only have that 10% allowable when you go to build back for square footage.
To get the grant.
Yes.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a question on this side.
Thank you. In the reconstruction grant, the process is that you must fill in the application and be approved before you
Do any construction.
any demolition.
So we're working on it. I can't speak definitively since we are still working on it as to how we can use FEMA's help aid for those who do need to recover and at least make their homes habitable. We're trying to work it out with FEMA in order to make sure that you guys can still be back in your homes and you're not out the entire time.
Right, but you can't do demolition before the grant is complete either.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you very much. And the 2,200, is that the livable square footage of a 2,000 square foot home, or does that include the garage?
It is all your heated space is the way that they classify that.
All the heated space. Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, basically, two questions. One, I'd like to get into the process of the first step, who we call to start this. And second of all, there's multiple grants. Can you apply for multiple grants and receive funding under all of the programs up to the maximum?
So if you're going through a statewide mitigation program, which is called Elevate Florida, just so that you guys are aware that it is called Elevate Florida. If you go through that process, we will shuffle you under as to which grant is going to be better helping you. If you are repetitive loss and you go ahead and apply, we will put you underneath Swift Current to reduce that cost to you. We are the ones who are going to be putting you underneath the correct grant to be able to help the best that we can. You can't apply for multiple grants underneath the statewide because we are doing this. Does that answer your questions? Correct. And in order to apply in the next steps, we have a flyer in the back that gives you all of the next steps of the documents you guys can start applying. So when we do open up that application period, you would have all of your majority of your documents and proof to start the application process.
When you say by start construction, I'm under contract. We actually don't start the engineering process of the permit till about March. So we could still fall underneath the program because the permit will not be submitted until March.
If you have not started construction at the time of application, and then the time that we go through the entire application process of reviewing it, making sure that it gets approved and everything by FEMA, and then you get into contract with the state aspect, then you would be able to start construction. And I can't tell you as to if that'll be done by March or not.
So there's a possibility that none of us in this room can really apply for these grants.
You can still apply even if you are underneath contract with a contractor, just as long as work has not started.
Okay, an approximate time to work through applications is?
We don't have a timeline for that because we're trying to expedite this as fast as we can. And that's also underneath the code of silence that I can't speak about. We will have more details about this within the next couple of weeks. This is very expedited process. I want you guys to realize that generally these grants take 3 to 5 years in order to go through it. And we're trying to get residents to go through it in 1 to 2 years. And we're trying to iron out a lot of those details to be able to make it happen.
So I'm a homeowner. What do I need to qualify? Do I have to have had insurance? Do I have to have had other steps? Not just that I'm a homeowner.
Yep. And you don't even necessarily have to be a homeowner. If you live in a mobile home and you are in a mobile home park, you don't own the property. As long as we have consent from the landowner of the property, we can figure out how to make it work for you as well.
Thank you. Sorry, 2,000 to 2,200. History regarding the property taxes. So it's going on $100 originally. This house is mitigating construction, reconstruction. His taxes go up significantly. Do you know?
I have no idea because that's going to be up to your tax collector and property appraiser.
Mike Twitty addressed that in another meeting that he held online. And your 3% cap, if you're homesteaded, applies to the new structure as well as the old structure. Nothing changes on.
Okay, any other questions? Let me get someone. Oh. Are there programs available that allow you to retrofit your house for future hurricane since we're in this area?
Are you meaning like wind retrofits, like roof and windows?
Right, all of it, or what would you? Right.
So structure elevation is technically a retrofit for flooding because you are raising the house as to the base flood elevation plus 2 feet. And base flood elevation, I can't tell you what it is for this area because it is truly honestly property and structure dependent. However, there are ways that you can go and look for it, but the structure elevation would be technically a retrofit for the flooding damages. So, and yes, to answer your question in short.
What if it was just to protect the windows, doors, those simple?
You can still apply.
Can you apply for that? Is there
Yes.
a program for that?
The statewide residential mitigation program, yes.
But because what she's asking, like flood guardian, you can actually get 7 feet of flood protection.
So you're talking about the flood barriers? No, those are not eligible underneath the statewide residential mitigation program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that answered the question I had. Yeah, thank you.
Just as a follow-up to your last comment, why not the flood barriers? It's a much more economical situation, particularly if it's a single or second event. And it is proactively preventing flooding in a much more economical alternative for people as opposed to a draconian measure. Just tear your house down and go up. Why isn't it considered?
It's a full eligibility aspect.
So if you're gonna like, if I wanted to put like my house back together right now, like just put a new kitchen in and that kind of stuff. And then wait for the reply of whether we could lift the house, are we able to do like that kind of construction before?
Yes, ma'am.
That you can do, okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Your construction for you to be habitable right now is going to come down to as to whether you're substantially damaged or not, which would come from your floodplain office. To be able to do that as far as permitting and everything, you can get your house to be habitable.
Next question. Over here.
I just to follow up to the grant process, I'm really familiar with the process. I'm a repeat offender, as this gentleman is here. So I understand in a grant submission process, it's usually, it opens up, let's say for 30 days, it'll open up April 1st. It will close historically in the past, April 30th. We submit our applications for the grant. Can we at that point, because we are fronting 100% of the cost, can we go ahead and then move forward with our permitting and then do the reconstruction? Because I received the letter that I'm a tear down. So I know I'm just waiting for reimbursement approval. Can I go ahead and move forward with that process and then wait to see if you approve the grant at that time? So you're telling me I have to wait for 2 years.
You have to wait until you have approved and you are under contract with us in order to be able to start the
When
construction.
the window closes in 30 days, it's going to take you all.
Our application period is going to be a rolling application period, so there are not going to be deadlines that anybody will be missing. And we will process them at the state and submit them towards FEMA. Then we will be forward.
So in the past, it's been a kind of a first come, first served basis. It's not going to be like that. So if we all apply for it and we meet the criteria, you're stating that we will receive those funds.
I can't give any guarantee on that just because of the engineering and the environmental reviews that we have to do.
But if we go through that process and we meet those standards and we apply and whatever we're reconstructing is approved, the funds are there for us all to receive those funds in a grant process.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Property acquisition, how does that process work? Does the inspector come in, give you a number, you like it, they give you a check, you're done? What's the process for that?
So the acquisition is actually based off of your fair market value of pre-damage structure. So we will have it appraised if there hasn't been a recent appraisal as to what it would be pre-market value, pre-disaster, and then we will make you an offer to it.
And how do you start that process? It's just the website you go to?
Of course.
All right.
And the same process, these project types are all underneath the same application process, and you will be submitting majority of the same information when it comes to homeowners.
There are different houses that we could build into a 2,000 square foot house. We could build a $500,000 house or a $1 million house. Does a $1 million house go through the same mitigation process and the same kind of help?
Yes.
The second question is, if I apply for the loan and I get approved and then I get the mitigation money, can I then reimburse the loan and how does it work if you get both? And
So if you're talking about like a small business administration loan, the SBA loan,
Are you talking about that kind of loan?
The one that lady was talking about the question here.
SBA, so if you were to use the SBA as far as like to try to use for your match, that is a duplication of benefits underneath FEMA eligibility. So you would not be able to use your SBA towards your match when it comes to covering the cost for your grant.
Does the personal income affect the
No.
kind of help?
Nope. Yeah, there is no limit to what we will give you. It all comes down to when we go do our engineering reviews. Part of that process is a benefit cost analysis. And it's not going to be necessarily home dependent because of the way that we are going to group projects, group homes, in order to be able to fund as many people as we can. So there is no limit as to what your dollar amount when it comes to your home.
That kind of answers my question, because I was kind of wondering what the maximum dollar amount was on these grants. Is there anything?
So specifically and only for mitigation reconstruction, the hard federal cost cap is 220,000. However, we are trying to work with FEMA because we do have a lot of homes that are going to need to be mitigated reconstruction in order to figure out how we can offset that.
Okay, if it should be, so it's going to cost a lot, 250,000 for the most part. So they really won't cover the full amount of it. You're saying about
For the mitigation reconstruction, the mitigation reconstruction is when we tear down your house and build it back to code, both Florida building code as well as the floodplain code. So in order to do that, the federal share cap amount is 220,000. But for elevations or acquisitions, there is no cap to it.
Okay, thank you.
So a couple of times you've referred to environmental impact approval and study in order to qualify for this, if your property does. We have people that are already going ahead with the home raising with the local builder, not asking for money from anywhere. And I've already been through the soil testing process in engineering. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
So the environmental and historical preservation review, which is an EHP review at the state level, we go through if your house structure is 45 years or older, because that is the limit when it comes to the historical preservation office. We go through to make sure that there's not a large amount of ground disturbance. We also make sure that there's not any like gopher turtles nests nearby, because if there's those, then we have to stop construction and we can't continue forward. We look as to how far we are going into the ground for the ground disturbance, whether we're going 2 inches or whether you're going 1.5 feet into the ground to be able to make it stable. We still have to do that review either way.
Now, would you feel very confident if a house next door to you passed all those? That yours will as well?
Like as far as those tests being done
in the neighborhood?
It's all going to depend on the age of the structure as well as like the building type of the structure, whether it's wood frame, block frame, or anything of that sort. But also when it comes down to your foundation, whether you have a slab foundation or any other type of foundation, it's all house dependent as to how extensive it's going to need to be.
All right, I have a question. So if they're our plan for a grant, we're gonna plan on demo and rebuild, as from the city's point of view, the house, the structure needs to just sit there as a shell for for a year or so, or.
We're trying to work it out as far as like what construction can be done in order to make the house habitable, because we want to make sure that people are back into their houses, but not making them ineligible for the grant funding.
Okay. Is there any other questions?
Hi, I'm Molly Kaput, and I work with the floodplain management division for FEMA. I'm trying to get into that. Okay. I just wanted to answer the question about floodproofing your home. All of these grants are designed to make your home compliant with the Florida Building Code and your local floodplain management regulations. As far as the Florida Building Code and your local floodplain management regulations, dry floodproofing is not allowed for residential structures. So that's not going to make your home compliant with the regulations and therefore is not eligible for reimbursement. I just wanted to say that.
Okay. And then, from your experience, what is the main disqualifying factor for grant applications that you don't see get processed?
Generally, we see that when it comes to the large infrastructure projects that counties put forth, not a lot on the resident side. So there's not one main trigger that's going to make you ineligible.
I'm also one of those people that have to tear down. I've got notification to that. My question to you is, if I have to wait 2 years to rebuild, there's no way I can live in my house now because due to mold concerns, the walls weren't torn out. I don't have any bathrooms, I don't have anything, so.
The 2-year mark is from the time, like, say you were to apply today, we start reviewing your application today. That 2-year mark would start today as to when the construction would be fully and complete on your house. That's going to include all of the application review, both like our planning reviews, our environmental reviews, and our engineering reviews, and then being able to get you underneath contract with a contractor and finish all of the construction aspect as well.
So it's 2 years without a home.
It is, yes. To that gentleman right there, sorry.
Yeah, tonight. When will you get, when will you expect, when do you expect to get an answer if you're approved? I know you've got 2 years to get it done. But when do you think you get an answer if you're approved?
Our timeline is looking roughly around 4 to 11 months before you would be in the contract. And that's all going to depend on us to how extensive the reviews that we need to do.
If I'm going to elevate my house, or a lot of people are looking at elevating their homes, it would be better to repair your home and then elevate it. And you're saying you don't want to do that.
I can't speak on that because I'm not going to tell you how to do it.
Okay. It's a lot easier to put things in at ground level than it is at 14 feet.
It is.
Yeah.
And I will fully admit to that. However, there's multiple ways that you can elevate a home. You can sometimes when we have contractors come in and it is it is substantially damaged in the aspect like cabinets and things need to be done. It is something like all of those things are going to have to come out in order to elevate the house to begin with. So whatever you were to do now, you would still have to have taken out as far as appliances and all of that for the structural integrity to be able to raise the home.
A lot of these elevators now will cut your slab and raise your whole slab. So you wouldn't be removing cabinets, you wouldn't be removing anything.
It all just depends on the method that they go down.
Yeah, well, that's the easiest method.
That brings up another question. Are you getting an approved list or do we get to pick our own contractor? Do they have to go through the state?
We're going to have to go through the state. We will have a contract list. And when it comes time, we will give you a list of contractors to be able to choose from.
So I appreciate the fact that you guys said you want people to make their houses livable while this process is going on, but that kind of works against financially, us to put a bunch of money in to replace cabinets, bathrooms and stuff so that it is livable and then have to turn around, tear it down and rebuild. And we're saying that the application process to approval is going to be 4 to 10 months, I think you said? Yes. Okay. And I'm also wondering what other, I don't know if this was addressed earlier, but what other counties or towns you guys are doing this for?
It's statewide.
It's statewide. So
depending on how many people apply, I mean, it could be way more than 4 to 10 months. And then also, how are you, like the state, going to be able to keep enough contractors to do the business? I mean, it seems like that would be a lot of contractors to rebuild all these homes.
That goes back to the fact that we're in a cone of silence, that I can't speak about it. And I only say this because like that is our state and federal procurement laws, that when we do have a procurement out, that we can't speak about as to how that procurement is gonna go.
Any more questions?
Before the election, the director of FM was on with the Weather Channel, and he said, we'd like to have all these homes either elevated or repaired before June 1st, 2025. Now, to my knowledge, the county above us, the county below us, and our county, we had over 47,000 homes flooded. That doesn't count all Florida. So we're probably talking 150,000 homes. So where 150,000 of us residents supposed to live?
Honestly, I can't answer that question for you because it's all gonna be dependent on when we start going through that process and everything.
Going back to the 2,000 square foot home where the state is looking at 2,000 heated space. And someone I brought up, Mike Twitty's, what was that, a month ago? It's after the storm. It's on YouTube, and he explains a little bit about how they figure the square footage a little bit different. So you probably, if you do go that route and rebuild, you want to run it past Mike Twitty's office.
Okay.
Last question. You go through the process, you get a grant approved. Are you saying you have to use a state certified contractor on a list? You can't pick your own
Yes, because it's
contractor to build your home?
correct, because it's statewide, and they will be underneath our contract in order to be able to do it. They won't be underneath a contract with you. They'll be underneath a contract with the state.
Okay. Can you get your own contractor approved on the state list?
I honestly can't tell you, just because it comes back to that kind of silence for the procurement aspect. But you can tell them to go ahead and apply to put themselves on that list for that procurement.
All right, thank you. Thanks for your help.
Even though we're paying for it out of pocket ourselves.
Even though we're paying for it out of pocket ourselves, we have to use your contractor.
Yeah, because they'll be underneath contract with the state. They won't be under contract with you.
But we pay them first. Is that not?
Like, so at the time of contract signing, when you come to the state, like for that contract of saying, hey, we have approved your application and you can start construction. At that time, when you go ahead and sign that contract is when you are supposed to come with the money. And then we are the ones who actually pay the contractors. Homeowners won't be paying the contractors.
So we pay you, or will you pay the contractors and then you pay us back? Confused.
And for the reimbursement aspect, we have to take in all invoices to make sure that they're eligible activities that they are putting on their invoices in order for FEMA eligibility and reimbursement aspects.
Okay. And do you guys have like customer testimonials or anything? I'm just curious about the quality of the buildings and things like that.
We're reviewing all of the contractors that come in to make sure that they are doing their job. And as the state, if they're not, we can take action.
And what about quality of the things that are put into the house and everything? Does that all have to be approved through you guys since they're technically under contract with you?
Yes.
You will be involved in that process when you are approving as to what cabinets you want back in and things of that sort. I will state that if you want any upgrades in that unit, that's not eligible underneath the grant. So you would have the masonite cabinetry, the masonite countertop, because that is the standard. You wouldn't have the option of the granite or the marble that you would want in your house. It's very basics, and it's going to put your house back to where it's livable, but also within code. That is FEMA eligibility. That's not a state eligibility aspect. Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think she has a
Hello?
question. Yes.
Oh, so I'm curious, if this is not your primary home, are you still eligible? So if you have
Yes.
two homes, yeah. Okay, did you have to already apply for FEMA, like, because we were hit with the hurricane? Or are you uneligible? Like, there were deadlines to apply for FEMA already, I think, with the hurricanes.
Whether you've applied for FEMA individual assistance or an SBA loan, that has nothing with the eligibility requirements when it comes to the statewide residential mitigation program.
Okay. Thank you.
So what is the name of the program for the retrofit? I realize what she said, but that doesn't include elevation. This isn't about any type of elevation. This is just doors and windows and shoring up the house for future hurricanes.
If it's doors and windows, like putting shutters, as well as retrofitting your roof, of doing the gable ties when it comes to the roof to wall connections, it would still be the statewide residential program, and it's called Elevate Florida. For your barriers and things, again, those aren't eligible.
Yeah, okay, so you would go through Elevate Florida?
Yes.
And apply through them?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So you said that with the countertops, people could go with masonite. If they wanted to do granite, they couldn't do that. Is there a way for them to pay the difference in costs from the lower grade to the higher grade materials they want, or is that? It's extremely difficult when it comes back to the reimbursement aspect, that if you were to go that option, you may not get reimbursed, even if it is the difference.
Is there a time period afterwards if I have to maintain the insides or the way the grant funded it?
Once it's closed out and the construction's done, we're closed out and everything, you could do it next day if you wanted to.
And then what other I guess commitments does it lock you into long term for receiving one of these grants?
So for the application aspect for the flood mitigation assistance Swift Current, you do have to have an active NFIP, National Flood Insurance Program insurance policy. For hazard mitigation at the time of application, you do not have to have that insurance policy. However, for both of the grants, once it is closed out and complete, it is going to be deed restricted that you have to maintain NFIP insurance for the life of the structure.
Do you have any other questions?
The retrofitting, would you have to have insurance if that's all you're doing?
If you're just doing the windows and doors, no, you don't have to have the NFIP insurance for it.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Oh,
So for a home that's flooded once and has been doing significant damage, the home needs to be torn down because people have received a letter, so it needs to be demolished. Build a new home up, elevated, brand new home. He's going to pay 75% of it.
Yes, if it's applied underneath the grant program.
and then the homeowner pays them at the time of the contract instruction starting, and then you guys do the approval process and then pay back or pay the contractor and then reimburse
Yes.
in the same
Yeah.
amounts, at the same time, okay.
Yes.
Any other questions?
You have one over here.
Oh, sorry.
So can you sell and assign that contract to somebody else? So if you apply and then you need to sell because you have a mortgage and you're drowning over there, can you assign that to, or is it only to the grant applicant himself only receives the funds? Does it go to the property or to the applicant?
So all of the paperwork, if you are underneath the application and all of that paperwork that you have signed agreeing to it, if the new homeowner agrees to the same things as far as like, and signs all of the same paperwork, yes, it can be transferred.
Can be transferred. Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just wanted to reiterate something I believe I heard correctly. So for the rebuild program where you take it down and you build a new one, if you get approved for that, then I, the owner, would pay the state the money and then you'll pay the contractors. Is that what you said?
Correct.
Okay. That's what I thought I heard. The other question I have is, it seems like there's a certain level for finishes and in the home. Where do you get that information? Like you said, granted is a no, correct?
So you can get all of the eligibility aspects, and I hate to direct you guys towards this because you guys are going to get very bored. It's a great thing to read when you want to fall asleep, but it is the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Assistance Policy Guide. And that will tell you as to everything, all of the approved activities and eligible activities that they will reimburse for.
So, like, I'm going to make it a little basic. Like, what if it's kitchen cabinets? Do you tell me you'll reimburse kitchen cabinets to this amount?
So when it comes to that time, depending on what you currently have in your home sort of situation, and we try to replace it with like things. However, there are times that people would like to upgrade it throughout that construction process. And that is where it becomes that it may not be eligible for that reimbursement aspect.
Okay, so today in my current home, I have quartz countertops. You would say, yes, we'll replace with quartz?
I'm not going to give you a definitive yes or no, because it's all going to come down to when we go to review your application and when we start submitting all of that reimbursement paperwork. And that's when we're getting into the finer details that every individual home is going to be different and every individual application is going to be different as to what it can be and cannot be done.
Okay, but you'll know this before you sign the paperwork? Like the fit and finish level that you're agreeing to? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Can you reiterate what the, if you have finishes that are higher end, you could get reimbursed?
Yeah, so it's all going to depend on as to what your current state of your house is or what it was pre-destroyed aspect as to what's going to be allowed for reimbursement. If you do have a granite, we do have a tendency to stay away from it because it is so costly. But again, it's going to be dependent on each individual house.
Okay, question, is the application portal open right now, or you go to vemportal.com to actually start your application? I mean, I want to start tomorrow if possible.
So we have a flyer on the back table with SBA for those next steps.
It said,
we don't currently have the application period open because we are in that kind of silence of securing a vendor for all of this.
Okay, so we go to that site, the communications register there, and then once it opens, we'll get email saying, here's where you go.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Excuse me, hello?
Go ahead.
If I heard you correctly, the maximum reimbursement was $220,000 per
That's for
home.
mitigation reconstruction.
Okay, and so when you're saying mitigation reconstruction, we are probably going to be substantially damaged, so we tear our house down and build a new one. Is that mitigation reconstruction? Am I
Yes.
understanding that? Okay, so, but the contractors that you're contracting with in the state of Florida, that means that they believe they can actually build a house where $220,000 is 75% of the cost, because we're getting really high costs estimates.
But like the 220 cap costs, as far as the federal share amount comes from, it does come from the FEMA policy guide. It's eligibility aspects. So there's no wiggle room that we can do with that. We are trying to fix it with FEMA, but I can give no guarantee.
Yeah, and that's very generous. I mean, that's very helpful. 220,000 is a lot of money, so that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
And so that's mitigation reconstruction, but if you do an elevation project, you can get more.
Correct.
And you could be substantially damaged and do an elevation project.
Correct.
Okay.
It's all, so for an elevation, it comes down to the structural integrity assessment. That is part of one of our engineering reviews, is we do have an engineer come out and do a structural integrity assessment to make sure that your house is structurally integrity to be able to be elevated as to whether we're going up a foot or whether we're going up 10 foot. We want to make sure that the house is structurally safe and sound. And if not, then we will be put over into the mitigation reconstruction.
And the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Assistance Policy Guide, does that have a number attached to it?
It would be the 2024 edition, the one that just came out in June.
And so the elevation is taking your existing home and just raising it exactly as it is, raising it up, correct?
Correct.
That's what, thanks, okay.
What's the elevation required in this town? Because a lot of people have flood elevation certificates, so would you add that to that elevation certificate? If we have to go up 10 feet and you're at 3 feet now, you'd be at 13 feet, or you'd be at 7 feet to raise. You follow what I'm saying?
So the base flood elevation is elevation above sea level, and most of Delaware Beach is either going to be 8 feet base flood elevation or 9 feet base flood elevation, unless you're bordered right up against the water and you don't look at the property on the map. And I can tell you right now that you're 8 feet base flood elevation. So the affordability code requires that you do +1 foot. So technically you'd have to elevate your first floor habitable space above 9 feet.
I'm at 4 feet right now. So,
And one of the determining factors might be you go a little higher than the minimum, you can save more on your insurance policies moving forward. Offers more protection. Any other questions?
Is the, you have to be the owner of the property when the disaster happened, so if there was a transfer of ownership, so and so didn't own it, when the disaster happened, but they're sitting and waiting to see if they're approved for a grant, is that still okay?
Yeah, that's still okay.
From the reconstruction perspective, when you're doing the approved vendor list, are they going to be bringing on anybody that does like a prefab or the new process that's the block with the rebar, because that's a more cost-effective solution? So is the state going to be allowing that, or is it just going to be a stick build?
That's going to come down to the eligibility requirements, and that's a little too far technical, but I can't honestly answer that question just because that's far more technical than I have the knowledge for.
I don't know if you looked at the vendor list, because I know that can cut the cost quite a bit if we can go like a prefab and have that option for those that for an affordability factor.
We're going to try to make it as affordable as we can, so it's all going to depend on that.
make sure I understood. She asked if somebody didn't own the property when the hurricane came, would they be eligible? So you said yes.
Yes.
So people that come in and purchase these properties for next to nothing right now, because people are just selling them because they don't want to deal with all this. So they're eligible to, so they get to buy property for super cheap, and then they're eligible to.
That's something that we're gonna look at on our back end when we go through that application process. We're telling everybody that they are eligible, but there might be things that when it comes down to us reviewing the application and going through our programmatic review to see as to how long somebody may have owned the property, and if they are one of those people who are just coming in and making it into a quick flip type of thing. We are looking at those things.
It's like, I purchased my house within the last 3 years. I paid top dollar. So, that's concerning to me that people would be able to do that, because that person might be taking the money from me getting assistance. And my other question was, you said that there was no limit on the elevating of the rooms, which is interesting because like the quotes that I've been seeing, 50,000, something to that effect. What's the reasoning behind capping at the 220 for rebuilding versus no cap on elevation?
That's a FEMA question. That's a FEMA headquarters question, as though they're the ones who put on that cap when it came to the eligibility aspects of mitigation reconstruction. That is not a state cap that we have that cap. It comes down to a federal cap.
And also, what is the approval timeframe for the elevation mitigation? Not the reconstruction, but just raising it.
It's the same. It's all going to be around
The same thing. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any more questions? All right, so, how long do you expect the cone of silence to last?
We put out our procurement for 2 weeks.
Then after that, there'll be a further press release or something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, from the city's perspective, who's the best point of contact for answering questions that come?
For residential questions,
Residential.
it would be the residential mitigation email address.
Okay. All right, that's all I have. Right after we started, we did have a Red Cross representative. She's over there, and she's available. She does some long-term disaster assistance. You may want to stop by and talk to see what she has to offer. We also have a lot of the handouts at the different tables. If you haven't been added to this subscription list to be directly in contact with the state for the mitigation grants, I don't know if we have a handout, but at least email me and I can get that information over to you. And get you on my email list for further information related to these grants. And then Mayor Gaddis is here. Would you like to say something? I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know that you all have probably way more questions than just what's happened tonight. We're doing all we can to get you as much information as quickly as we can. And at the same time, we're also working diligently to make sure that these substantial damage determinations are coming as rapidly as they can. I know they were slow to begin with, but City Manager Riefler has done an excellent job of accelerating that. He's called in some reinforcement to help make these determinations happen much faster. That's going to speed up the permitting process. Hopefully everyone doesn't have to tear down or raise up, but I do realize that that is going to happen for some of you, and we will be behind you. We just want you to stay. You're part of our family, and we're going to do whatever we can to help you. So, yes, Mr. Banker. That's true. Yes, we did waive our fees. Now I don't think we can do anything about the county's fees, but as far as our fees go, we have definitely waived them all. And we're trying to do everything that we can
I know it's a difficult time. It's really incredible. This is the first time it's ever happened, and we're all part of it. So we're all in this boat together, and we're learning and we're adapting, and we are going to overcome this. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you, man. Oh, we got a couple more. So I'm still at Tyler Basin, which is the contractor is doing the substantial damage estimate reports. And they're telling me to have them complete by the end of the month. I have not heard anything different. If you do put in a permit application, I can get it reviewed, that file, and processed faster. So something to consider. Any more questions? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming out. It's a pretty good turnout for Vero Beach. It's rare that we don't have enough parking spots, so let's go.
It's really important. I do apologize for the noise. Been involved in a lot of these. So I've worked with them for 20 years. I'd like to thank Angie for the way she answered these questions. Was superior. She went right to the point, yes or no. Thank you so much.